I'm probably going to name this video something in the lines of the strangest separation technique that I've ever discovered, because this technique is really strange, but really cool. It might only work in specific cases, so keep that in mind. So even though this technique might be very limited, I do really want to show you it because I think it's really cool. So without further ado, let's get right into this technique. Hello, I quickly wanted to say if you want to support this channel, you can do so by listening to my music on Spotify or Apple Music, or by going to my website and looking at some of my products. There are even free ones that you can download really easily. Alternatively, if you're interested in private lessons, I also provide those, and all the information for that you can also find on my website. So this is the project. I have a kick and a bass and two lead sounds which are playing a nice sequence together, and I'm just going to play it so you can get familiar with the sounds that we have, and then we'll get right into the technique that I've developed to separate the two lead sounds and to give them each a little bit more space in the mix. So this is what we're working with, a fairly aggressive psytrance lead sound created out of these two layers. And what you can hear is that for me, the two layers are a little bit too loud for this mix. And you can also see that if we go into the leads, and if you take a look at this meter right here, you can see that they clip right above 0. It's a little bit hard to see on other devices, so I'm going to turn these off because they do impact the volume, and I'm going to open this up. And you can see that it's going to go, if I set this to 0, you can see that it's going to go right above 0. Which is not really what we want. If we're going to mix things, and I've talked about this before, we want to gain stage them so that if the mixer is at 0, that it's actually going to go to 0 dB. And you can see, if we look at these, the individual ones are going to go under 0, or at least not going over it. Both of them stay nicely below 0, but they sum together into a sound that goes above 0. Let's get back to our initial configuration. Let's now see how we can use this technique that I've developed to get them to sum together to an amount that's below 0. So the idea that I had for this technique was to focus on time separation. And what time separation means is that you're going to have elements play at different parts of time. So they're not actually playing together. And the way I am going to do this is using a very fast LFO. So here you can see we have LFO tool, and they're affecting the volume of individual sounds. So one is for the tone lead, and then the other one is for the SSQ lead, which are the two different leads in this project. And as you can see, they kind of have opposite shapes. So they're basically crossfading between the two sounds. But it's happening at a very fast rate. You can see 1/128. It's a very fast rate, and if we actually play them, you can see individual cycles start to appear. You can already hear that it's going to make the sound different. So now with them enabled, they definitely sound different than if you disable them. And this is where the idea of this trick can sometimes work and sometimes it won't work for your particular sound. This is where that idea comes from. Some sounds might react really well to a separation technique like this, where you have these two LFOs and they're changing the sound. And some sounds just might not react to this at all, or it might really destroy the sound. I think for an aggressive sound like this, it works better, because this is a kind of sound design technique which we call amplitude modulation, because of the very fast LFO on the volume of these two sounds. We're doing something called AM, which is this amplitude modulation, which is just this idea of changing the amplitude of a sound really fast. So now let's look at the result that we have from this mixing technique. Again, I'm going to go back to a setup with no delay, no reverb, and I'll set this to 0 dB so that you can see where we're actually peaking at. And I'll make some space so it's easier to see. You can see that we're going a lot below 0 in this case. So we're actually gaining a few decibels in headroom with this technique. and we're still getting a usable sound. It's a different sound. It's definitely a sound that is different from the sound that we had before the LFO tool, but it's still a usable sound, and it's a cool way to just gain a few dB if you're already going for an aggressive kind of sound. In my opinion, as I said, that's where it works the best. It's a cool way to get a few dB of headroom, as well as this extra like sound design technique which you can use to just improve your sounds or change them. Might not improve them, as I said, might not work for your sound, but it could definitely have a cool impact on the sound. So that's all there is to this technique. It is a little bit of a shorter video, but I think it was a really cool idea, and I just kind of wanted to share it. Sometimes I have ideas that don't really make it into a video, but this idea was too good not to show it off in its own video. I am planning to do maybe a video where I show 5 strange techniques or weird techniques, or maybe not even weird techniques, just techniques that I cannot really put into a full video, and I might make like a collection of them. But if you enjoyed this video, if you enjoyed this technique, and if you find it useful, then let me know with a like. If you're new here, subscribe. This is going to be the video for today. As I said, a little bit of a shorter one, but I hope you enjoyed it nonetheless, and I hope to see you in the next one. Bye bye.